What's up, guys? We are live. So, this is a podcast a lot of you guys have been asking for and waiting for, and I am excited we can make it happen. We got Dr. Robert Glover. Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
You got it right, Alex.
Perfect.
Did I get your name right?
Alex, yeah, it's a tough one. Alex is a
Yeah.
bit tricky. He's the author of No More Mr. Nice Guy. So, I don't know if you're aware of this, Dr. Glover, but you have a cult following in the manosphere.
I kind of had an inkling of that. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a typically my community isn't too favorable to academics, but you're one of the few that they really seem to like.
You know, I spoke at the 21 convention probably 3 years ago, pre-COVID, and
Yeah.
you have about 150 guys there. You know, and a lot of them knew me. You know, came up and talked to me. So I did a poll. And I said, how many of the guys were familiar with No More Mr. Nice Guy? Probably about three-quarters of them, knew the book. And I said, well, I'm not sure if No More Mr. Nice Guy is a gateway drug to Red Pill or if Red Pill's a gateway drug to No More Mr. Nice Guy. But, a lot of good men, a lot of great guys. I had a really good time hanging out with the pickup and Red Pill guys there.
Yeah, I spoke there 2 years ago, so we missed each other by a year. But I would probably think, if I take a guess, it's more like your book is the gateway to the red pill. I would say
That's my guess. That's my guess as well, because I think maybe guys find No More Mr. Nice Guy, and then guys are inquisitive. They go looking for more. What else is out there, which is kind of interesting because when I was trying to get the book published 20 years ago, it took about 3 years to find a publisher, and the editors at big publishing companies kept saying, Robert, we like your book. It's well written, but our marketing department says men won't buy a self-help book. And I go, you don't know the guys out there that, and that was kind of pre-Amazon maybe. And, where you can just go on Amazon, people who bought this book, also bought this, and guys just click on, on 5 or 6 books. And so, there's just so much information out there, and men are hungry. They're looking for answers.
Yeah, Tucker Max has the same story. He got rejected by a whole bunch of publishers just left and right. They're like, no one's going to hear stories about you hooking up with girls, you partying. No one wants to hear that. And then finally finds a publisher to release it in like #1 New York Times bestseller. So it's funny how publishers can be so off. Even though that's the main job is to predict what's going to sell, they can be so wrong in their assessments like over and over again. So I find that pretty interesting.
No More Mr. Nice Guys bringing in 6-figure royalty checks every year. So yeah, they got it wrong.
Yeah, congrats on that. So let's start off with this. What kind of a doctor are you?
A good one. What else? What other answer is there? I have a PhD. My doctorate's in marriage and family therapy.
Okay.
I was a marriage and family therapist. For about 40. Well, started about 40 years ago. Now I primarily just work with guys.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, that's kind of what I figured. I figured it was in therapy. So I'm sure you're aware of this very interesting phenomenon, how #1, a lot of therapy doesn't really work well with men because it's a little bit, has a little bit of a tint to it. Of course, there are great therapists out there, but that's just something. And also there's almost like a stigma for men to go into therapy, which I think is silly because I think everyone can benefit from therapy. But what I've heard when I've had other people on who are therapists is they say, yeah, listen, like, a lot of men are having a really hard time finding a therapist that can actually help them, that doesn't just like basically, patronize them and stuff like that. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think things have changed a lot. When I first went into private practice 30 plus years ago, again, as a marriage and family therapist. So, a lot of the couples coming to see me were the man was being drugged into therapy by his wife. The wife was the gatekeeper of the relationship and dragging him to therapy. By the time I quit doing private practice 12, 15 years ago, it was the men dragging the women, their wives and girlfriends into therapy. And it was the wives and girlfriends that were bolting early when they got confronted with anything. And so in terms of therapy, I think it has changed a lot because, for example, I worked with a woman therapist for several years who had a really good attitude about men. And she was like supportive of my work, me writing No More Mr. Nice Guy. And I get a lot of emails from therapists, women and men, who say, I recommend your book to all my male clients. So I think in the past, there wasn't really just a great way for therapists to know how to approach men and their issues. But I think that's changing. I think it's changing quite a bit. And what I discovered as a therapist, if I sat like you and I, if you came to my office and we were sitting across from each other and we're talking about whatever's going on in your life, guys kind of get in their heads. We're going to talk about it from a heady perspective.
Right.
That's why I really like doing men's groups. And by the time I left private practice, I was doing 5 men's groups a week, because you put a guy in a group, now he's in a social context. And who he is going to manifest itself in that context. His defense mechanisms, his behaviors that alienate him, his self-limiting beliefs, all that's going to come up where it's very visible, and now it can really be dealt with in a social context. So I agree that one-on-one therapy isn't always the most productive with men, but I'm a big fan of group therapy just because it gets guys with the tribe. They feel safe, they trust each other. One of them opens up and reveals and is vulnerable, and then there's a chain reaction that next thing you know, everybody's opening up and revealing. So I love that process with men.
Yeah, well, I'm a big believer that the right therapist can be extremely beneficial to pretty much anyone's life. And we're not even talking about people who are depressed or anxious, just people who are trying to improve certain bad habits that they have. I've been very public about the fact that, a few years ago, I went to therapy. I tried hypnotherapy. I tried a bunch of things. And again, I wasn't like depressed. I wasn't like, a crazy person. There's just certain things in life that were kind of holding me back, right? And I found it pretty helpful. But I think the trick is, from what I've seen, is finding that right therapist. I think that can be really, really hard. And it's a really brutal process, because I personally had to talk to at least 10 therapists before I found one that I even kind of resonated with. So
that can happen. And, people will say, well, can you recommend a therapist? And I say, it really is very personal that, who I think might be a good therapist, some people might not connect with very well, and others might well. So I think you took a good approach by basically, auditioning therapists, because you really do need to click. You need to feel safe. You need to feel like they get you and that they have something to offer you.
Yeah. Do you feel like your book is well accepted in the therapy community? Because my gut feeling would be, even though your book isn't political, I would think that people associated with kind of like more Ray manosphere type of stuff, and kind of the vibe I get from the therapy community is it's like kind of very like feminine, like left centered. So yeah, I guess my question is, do you find that your book is generally very well accepted, or is it only like some therapists who are willing to kind of put their neck in the
That's hard to tell. Because I don't know. I don't hang out in therapy communities anymore, because I don't sit in an office, and call myself a therapist anymore. But all I can tell you is the feedback I get. A lot of men tell me their therapist recommended the book to them. I get a lot of emails from therapists saying they recommend it to all their male clients, and maybe will even write me asking for, advice on how to deal with men in their practice. So I agree that I think many therapists go into therapy because they're codependent by nature. They like helping people, but codependency isn't necessarily the healthiest thing in therapy. You need to be able to, one reason I like working with men is I can just be direct. I can be blunt. I can take a big stick out and say, listen, that's not working. Let's figure out why you keep doing the same thing that isn't working. I can be really direct with men. And I think more and more therapy as coaching is becoming a stronger influence. More therapy is maybe moving kind of into that direction, more of a coaching model. And I think having something like No More Mr. Nice Guy gives them a model to work off of how to work with men. Because honestly, when I went looking for a therapy men's group 25, 30 years ago, really all that was out there that's being written for men was probably like Robert Bly's Iron John and Michael Meade, and the whole mythopoetic stuff, which was really good, groundbreaking stuff. But it really didn't give therapists much direction for how to work with men. When I was in grad school, I don't think I got taught anything specifically about how to work with men or what men's issues were. But I think that's changing. I really do think the therapy world's coming to address the fact that in many ways, men are falling through the cracks. They're getting left behind. They're flunking. They're being flunked out of school. They're leaving school. They're not achieving. Women. The school system's been pretty much set up by women for women, and so the women just excel in the way the school system's set up. Boys don't do well having to sit in a desk and chair, all day long, listening to someone lecture and write on a blackboard. So I think the therapy world is beginning to recognize that boys and young men are really vulnerable and really, really we need to pay attention.
Well, that's good because the statistics on young men are terrible,
They're
atrocious.
terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, there. One that I was reading is that in 2008, something like 8% of men under 30 repeated being virgins. Now the number is 28%. We're talking about an increase in 20%. Well, actually, no, not more 20%. We're talking going from 8% to 28% in a little bit more than a decade, which is
Yeah.
insane, mind
Uh,
blowing.
yeah. It is. I agree. And yeah, just the being the virgin part, boys, young men should be able to, know how to talk to women. They should, be able to get laid. That's when Mother Nature wants people having the most sex is about 18 to 25 years old.
Mhm.
And now we have a lot of 18, 25-year-old guys. I saw one study a couple of years ago that over half of all men under 21 report not having sex in the last year and maybe never. So kind of the same thing that you're talking about. And if anybody should be having sex, it's not me at 66. It should be 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old guys. But again, they're being left behind. So many men don't know how to talk to women. They don't know how to connect. They have social anxieties. They have all kinds of insecurities. Playing video games is always easier than like talking to people. So that's what they've done. And again, they're being left behind, and the school system doesn't seem to be doing a lot to help. I just yesterday, a couple of days ago this week, a high school in Seattle area where I grew up. A 14-year-old boy shot a 17-year-old in the school. I think I saw 3 different school shootings this weekend around the country. And when boys are packing guns and shooting at each other at 14, that's serious stuff. And again, the boys are falling through the cracks, and the school systems don't seem to have an answer for it.
Yeah. A theory that I've always put out there, which is a little controversial, but I will stand by this. I think not all, but a decent percentage of school shootings would be avoided if those guys were getting laid. Like
Oh,
it's
I agree. If it's controversial, I'll sign up because here's the thing that not only did our ancestors have a lot of sex. I mean, if you look at any sociological studies, anthropological studies, for 1.5 million years, our human ancestors were tribal, and everything was shared, including sexual access. Everybody had sex with everybody. Mother Nature likes lots of penises and lots of vaginas. That creates a genetic diversity that one man with one woman for life, one vagina, one penis for life. Mother Nature doesn't like that model very well. It doesn't create a genetic diversity. But for the last 10,000 years, that's kind of what was been imposed on us culturally, religiously. And now we've got this situation where not only are young men have no clue of how to get sexual access, and so they feel rageful and left out. But there's also this thing of where men tend to get their identity from having a girlfriend or not, having been laid or not. And so now all of a sudden, if women seem to like us and are open to being sexual with us, we think we're okay, we're good. And if women don't seem to be noticing us, or if we're too don't have the skill set to notice them noticing us, or the skill set to take advantage of the attention they give us, then we think there's something wrong with us. We're flawed. And then when you feel flawed long enough, you tend to get rageful and you want to lash out at other people. And so I agree that I think if more young men had more regular sexual access, I also believe it would cut down the violence that we see.
Yeah, you never hear the stories like, yeah, until this school shooter, he was had 2 girlfriends and he was
He
had a
was
real
popular. Yeah, you don't hear that.
it makes no sense. It's always the guy that was bullied, rejected by everyone, no one liked him, school weirdo. It's always the same story over and over and over again.
Yeah. And almost always a loner. They'd go, you get some attention on the internet by, espousing something kind of crazy, and then, planning his big thing. And so again, that's just another example of boys falling through the cracks that, just banning guns isn't going to make young men quit being violent.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Well, which kind of leads us very naturally to the next point. So the title of your book, or the description or caption for your book, is "A Proven Plan for Getting What You Want in Love, Sex, and Life." Right.
Right.
So It's a very broad question, but we can just start taking it apart piece by piece. What is that plan? Like, what are some of the things you advocate?
Well, basically, I advocate, men developing skills to get what they want in love, sex, and life. And with nice guys, their basic skill set is built around codependency,
Uh-huh.
and it's built around what I call 3 covert contracts. And that covert contract number 1 is that if I'm a good guy, I'll be liked and loved, and the women I want to have sex with will want to have sex with me because I'm a good guy.
Uh-huh.
Covert contract number 2 is that if I meet other people's needs without them having to ask, then they will meet my needs without me having to ask. Covert contract number 3 is if I do everything right, then I will have a smooth, problem-free life.
Uh-huh.
So these are the core roadmap that nice guys use trying to get their needs met, trying to get
Uh-huh.
love, trying to be liked, trying to get laid. And they don't work. They're all flawed thinking.
They don't work.
None of them work. They're all flawed for
They're
many
actually
ways.
opposite.
But yeah, the opposite. Yeah, if I try to read your mind and figure out what you want and give it to you, and then you'll like me, and then you'll read my mind and give me what I want, that's real flawed thinking.
Yeah.
And nice guys tend to be pretty bad receivers anyway, and tend to surround themselves with people that aren't very good at giving to them because they kind of tend to pick broken people to hang out with because they think that's their best shot at getting love and getting sex. So basically, No More Mr. Nice Guy is teaching guys how to be authentic, how to be real, how to make their needs a priority, how to get what they want, how to invite people in their life to help them get what they want, how to set boundaries, how to remove themselves when necessary, how to overcome their self-limiting beliefs that kind of keep them stuck and playing it safe. So there's a lot of different pieces to that, but a lot of it really just involves loving ourselves, honoring our needs and wants, being who we are, not seeking approval or external validation, and living life on our terms. And so, that's kind of the broad overview of what it's
Well,
like.
let me ask you this question. It's again a tough question, but if you had to take a guess, like your gut feeling, what percentage of men would you say are, nice guys?
Yeah, I get asked that quite a bit. And I've been being asked that for 20 plus years. And one time I would have said 30 or 40% are nice guys, but I'd put the number over 50%, at least as I look at North America, Canada, US. But I get emails from people all over the world. My book's been translated into several languages. I get emails from Europe, Australia, New Zealand. So there's nice guys everywhere. But what I'm seeing now that's really significant, when I started kind of looking at my own nice guy issues and working with other men, I was in my late 30s, going in my early 40s. And so most of the guys I was talking to were like what would be called baby boomers or maybe just below, maybe Generation X. And most of these guys reported their fathers as being distant, unavailable, absent, addictive, rageful, and maybe their mothers, were vilifying their fathers. So most report not having a real good connection with dad. Nowadays, a lot of the men I talk to are in their 20s and 30s, and they report having nice guy dads. So dad was around, but dad's way of teaching the boy
That was a pushover.
Pardon?
Yeah, it was a pushover, basically.
Yeah. So now the boys will say, yeah, all my father taught me was just don't piss off your mother, because that's what he was trying not to do as well. So I think the number of nice guys out there is expanding. And I think a good part of that, again, is so many young men grow up with the internet and they never learn really social dynamics. They don't really learn how to be social because they can be on World of Warcraft or jerking off to porn or smoking dope or watching Netflix, all that stuff that doesn't require any social intelligence. And then so when they do try to interact with somebody, they use the only skill sets they have. Well, I'll try to be different than the jerks I hear women complain about. I'll try to be nice to women, and then they'll like me because they say they don't like jerks, so they'll like me for listening to them talk about their problems or doing things for them or giving them things.
I can totally envision, like what you're saying, like 50% of men in North America. I think in third world countries, it probably wouldn't be as predominant, but in, North America or Western Europe, I can see it being 50%, every other guy to some extent. Maybe they're not like full on nice guy, but they at least have some of the nice guy tendencies. And the way I see it play out is kind of like this. Someone is a nice guy, right? So they're basically their dating strategy. It's usually not conscious, subconscious, right?
Yeah.
Is if I'm really nice to this girl, right? I give her everything she wants, right? That at some point she will recognize how awesome I am. And then she will go for me. The problem is that almost never happens. The guy gets friend zoned. And when he ultimately makes his intentions known, the girl's like, whoa, like I just see
Whoa.
you as a friend.
Yeah, I never thought of you in that way.
Yeah. And so they go through this process over and over again, and then they can go in several different directions. Now, the ideal direction to go is that they discover your book or they discover my content. They're like, okay, whoa, like I'm following a completely incorrect strategy. Instead of trying to please the girl, I should just be more authentic and have boundaries, right? That's the ideal direction.
Yeah.
But quite often, it doesn't go in that direction. They either get depressed or
Yep.
they get angry, right?
Yep.
And if they get angry, that could potentially lead to a threat to a woman, they take their anger out on, or themselves. If they
Yeah.
get depressed, they just withdraw from the dating marketplace and they watch a lot of porn. They get on OnlyFans, right? So they don't hurt anyone, but they're just sad and they think they have no chance, right? Because again, they tried what their dad told them, which is being really nice to the girl, and it didn't work.
Or their mother told them that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, just be a gentleman. Treat the girls nice. They like
Right.
that.
Yeah, and it will be sweet if that works. Now, I think here's kind of how I see the stages. So, stage number one for someone, they're a nice guy, right? Then they realize it doesn't work, so they go too far in the other direction and they become a jerk, right? At least that was kind of like the transition I went through, where I was like, okay, like yeah, this whole nice guy thing isn't working, Alex. I'm gonna try being an asshole, right? Because they say women like assholes. That usually works a little bit better, but it still doesn't work well because the girl just thinks you're rude. And then ideally, you get to the third stage, which I consider the final stage. And that's when you realize you can be a kind human being without being a pushover, while having boundaries, while having integrity, while, not people pleasing. I think a really good litmus test that I always recommend to my audience is this. The thing you're doing for that girl, would this be something you would do for your friend? If the answer is no, then you shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
You should not be doing things for random girls that you would not do for a friend of yours, right? So are you going to pick up your friend's laundry at 2 a.m. and no, probably not. You're going to be like, dude, get your own fucking laundry, right? So why are you doing it for the girl? So that's kind of like how I see this.
I like that.
What do you think about that?
Oh, I agree with the way you're looking at it, because what I tell guys is, they'll read my book or they'll find some of my material and they'll say, okay, Robert, I get it. Being a nice guy isn't working for me. Not just with women or sex, but just not working.
Uh-huh.
And they go, but I don't want to come over. I don't want to go to the other extreme and be the asshole jerk.
Uh-huh.
I don't want to be that guy. Where's the middle ground between the two? And my answer always is, I don't know where the tipping point is between two toxic extremes. Uh-huh. And both the nice guy and the asshole jerk are toxic extremes, I think, of the same thing. And the way I look at it, this seems to be a helpful model, is that both the wussy doormat and the asshole jerk are both in a state of anxiety, and maybe with a bunch of shame wrapped in there as well. Uh-huh. And they're both, therefore, in a perpetual fight, flight, freeze mode. Uh-huh. The nice guy on one hand, over here on this side, he goes into the flight freeze mode, and they've added fawn to that as well, where, I'll be nice to everybody. That's what they're doing to try to manage their anxiety and get their needs met and be liked and approved of. The asshole jerk's also in a fight, flight, freeze, anxiety state, but he just goes into fight mode. So he just, bullies people and is aggressive to get what he wants and dominate situations. So becoming a little bit more one or the other doesn't solve anything because you're still in the anxiety state. Uh-huh. So what I found, in terms of kind of going back to your question earlier, is, what do I teach guys about getting what they want in love, sex, and life? Uh-huh. A significant part of that is learning to self-soothe ourselves to where we can calm our nervous system, soothe ourselves. And then I think what we do is we rise to another plane. It's that third level that you were talking about. Uh-huh. And yeah, sometimes guys will ping pong between the two and realize neither one works. But when we can learn to soothe our anxiety, be differentiated, and differentiation is the ability to ask ourselves, what do I want? What feels right to me? And then follow through and do that, even if there's resistance on the outside or resistance on the inside. Have good boundaries, pursue our passions. These things up here are what give us a good life and what make us, I'd say they make us attractive to all things feminine. Women, uh-huh. Dogs, cat, baby, money, adventure, opportunity. And so that's kind of a challenge for a lot of guys to make that conceptual leap. It's not becoming just a little bit less of this or a little bit more of that. It really is doing a fundamental paradigm shift. And I found that for most men, learning to soothe their anxiety state so that they can be honest, so they can ask for what they want, so they can walk up and approach a woman, so that they can be vulnerable. All of those things require the ability to soothe their anxiety. And I think that's a really big place that I start with a lot of men, is teaching them that skill set.
I would argue that what you're saying not only makes you attractive to feminine, it actually makes you more attractive to other men. Not in like
I agree.
but like more men will respect you and want to be your friend. But let's talk about the soothing. So how specifically would you, like advocate for a guy to do that?
Well, it's really simple. That's what makes it beautiful. When we are stressed or anxious, our breathing gets erratic, and usually we get kind of hunched. We close off our lungs. We close off our diaphragm. It imbalances the oxygen and the CO2 in our blood, which amps up the anxiety states. And so when we're anxious, one thing I'll do with guys, I'll say, put your hands behind your back, and just that pulls your shoulders back. So it's good practice while doing interviews. Just kind of pull your shoulders back, sit up straight, breathe up through your asshole. So breathe into your diaphragm and put your feet flat on the ground and just feel the solidness of the ground, and just slowly breathe up, fill your belly, slowly let it out, chest and shoulders back. That's it. That's the basics. Now there's techniques you can teach: box breathing, 3-part breathing. There's different ways to just practice being in your body and being in your breath. And there's something about feeling your feet on the ground that is really significant as well. Because like when I work with so many men, most men are, this is me. I slouched all the time. They slouch like this, legs crossed, fidgeting, moving, and all of that. It means, they're in a perpetual state of anxiety. Their body can't be still. They can't have good posture. They can't be erect. They're not grounded. And I promise you, all that fidgeting, slouching, and slumping is not attractive to the outside world. Nobody's going to trust somebody that can't even sit up straight. They can't sit still for very long. They're not going to want to get close to that. They're going to feel anxious. So when I teach men to get grounded, soothe themselves, that in itself makes them more attractive. People start noticing that person. Like when I got divorced in my late 40s and got out in the dating world, and prior to that, my first 2 wives were my first 2 sex partners, and I, got with them both through nice guy seduction, being nice and treating them well and doing things for them.
Sometimes it works. That is true.
Well, I'm not saying it never works, but you're usually probably not going to really get what you most want doing that. You're going to get women that kind of like the idea that you take care of them and do everything for them.
Yeah. And as soon as you stand up for them, for yourself, then they're gonna.
It gets iffy. So here I was in my late 40s and 50s. I wasn't getting any younger. Hair's going gray. Didn't have hair on top, and everywhere I went, women are checking me out, giving me numbers, getting naked on first dates, even propositioning me. Now I hadn't gotten younger. I hadn't gotten richer. I hadn't gotten better looking. The only thing that really changed was my confidence level. Was my ability to just be able to walk into a room, be confident, start conversations, connect with people, again, grounded, calm, and that's very attractive. You're probably familiar with Mark Manson and his book Models. Basically, the whole theme of Models is don't be needy. Don't be that guy that I need you to like me. I need a girlfriend. I need to get laid. He said being needy drives away women. And there's something about just having that calm confidence, solid, feet on the ground, good posture, shoulders back, breathing. And then I add to that just a few little mantras. One of mine is I'll handle it. No matter what happens, I'll handle it. I've done lots of TV interviews, radio interviews through the years, been in lots of situations, scared the bejeebers out of me. My second ever television interview was with Bill O'Reilly. I didn't even know who Bill O'Reilly was. I had to go look up who Bill O'Reilly was. That was
not the nicest guy.
and he wasn't. But I tell you what, the way I handled him got me a book contract. That's what took the publisher over the top and said, hey, the way you handled O'Reilly, we know you can market your own book. So we're giving you a contract. But the point was, I'm just in a little cubicle in Seattle looking at a red light on a camera. I don't even see a monitor. I'm on national television, and I'm breathing. I'll handle it. No matter what happens, I'll handle it. Just talking myself, soothing myself. I remember I was doing a show for Geraldo, and they had me all mic'd up, and the sound guy comes over and goes, "You look really calm." And I go, "Well, I've done a few of these." But the truth was, I was anxious as hell. but I was just soothing myself, grounding, breathing, repeating. I'll handle it. I've handled it before. I'll handle it again. This is going to go great. And so you can apply those tools in any context, going to a job interview, asking your boss for a raise, talking to a woman you're attracted to, breaking up with somebody, anything that if you're calm and grounded, you can be your authentic self. You can be clear. You can be powerful. And that alone makes such a big difference.
So when you're doing the mantra, you're basically doing an affirmation, right? That's what it is. Okay. You mentioned you have several mantras. What are some of the other ones?
Well, one of my favorite ones is I love waking up in the morning, not knowing how my day is going to end. So I love adventure. I love, going to bed at night going, wow, I didn't see that coming. Well, one of my clients in one of my groups a few years ago said, Robert, you say that. He goes, but that's hell for me. I like every day to be exactly the same. And I promise you, this is a guy that had not been laid in years as well. Just him wanting everything to be cookie cutter the same, never change. You gotta be willing to have adventure and say yes to interesting opportunities. Another one of my mantras is a sin to say no when you should have said yes. Another one is sometimes you have to let go of the things you love to get the things you want. Those are just little things that, I've just kind of picked up over time.
So let's talk a little bit more about the breathing. So are you familiar with a content creator called Brian Bain? His thing is the Fearless Man. That's the name of his channel.
Yeah. I spoke at one of his workshops.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, nice guy. He's
a good guy. I love the work he does.
Yeah. Very similar to what you're describing. Very similar.
He does. He gets guys into a room, works on their posture, works on their breathing, works on the moving energy, and it's called embodiment. He gets that going on. And then he has these 3 sexy models sitting up there in really tight, next to nothing clothing. And then he'll bring one of the models up and, they have to introduce themselves to the model and start a conversation. And all this while Brian or one of his coaches is there, like touching his body, kind of helping his, shoulders be upright, kind of pulling his stomach in, relaxing down a little bit, breathing. He's like coaching him the entire, and I think they videotape this stuff as well. So you can see how you come across. That's powerful stuff because most of us have no idea how we come across.
Yeah, no, for sure. So like a general recommendation, let's say you have your average guy, I don't know, let's say he's moderate level of anxiety, nothing too crazy. He's not like, he doesn't have any kind of psychiatric disorder, but he has some social anxiety, he has some confidence issues. Like for example, how many times a day, how many minutes would you advise him to do this kind of like breathing, grounding work?
That's a good question. I don't know. I'd say, do it this many times. But I think what I would do is I'd teach him to pay attention to what are his anxiety states, to know when he's anxious, when his palms are getting sweaty, when his breathing's getting shallow and ragged, when he's slumping, when he's spinning in his head, about something. That's probably more effective to learn to recognize what are those anxiety states and then learn to practice the breathing while in those states. Now, if you just wanted to give it as an assignment, for example, I do Wim Hof breathing every day.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that next. That's funny. Okay.
Yeah. So I do that every day. In fact, I'm going to do it in one of a group I lead tomorrow. I already said I'm going to do a Wim Hof breath with a death meditation. And it's really a cool meditation. In between while you're holding breath out and holding breath in, I walk them through a visualization of taking their last breath and watching all their regrets, feeling all their accomplishments, and then nothingness, and just doing cartwheels through the cosmos. It's a really powerful meditation. But in terms of just the way I like to do is kind of a box breathing or actually macro cyclical breathing. What it is, you think about breathing down your front. And when you get down your front, you clench your PC muscle in your cock and kind of like you're moving the energy back, then you squeeze your anus muscle, and then think in terms of moving the energy up your spine into this giant circle. And so you breathe in, you're breathing down into your belly, just kind of squeeze your cock and then anus, and then move the energy back, and it just circles. Now, this is actually a really soothing way to breathe, and it's also really good for sexual stamina because you're working those muscles down there that you use to last longer and to not come so quickly. So I would tell guys do that. You do it while driving your car, Do it while sitting in a meeting. Do it while sitting at your computer. Anytime, I think in terms of anytime you can sit and put your feet flat on the floor, practice that circle breathing and moving the energy down the front, squeezing, moving it towards the back. Now, there's also box breathing where you breathe out you breathe 4 seconds, hold it, 4 seconds out, hold it, 4 seconds in, hold it, 4 seconds. So in a box. So I'd say do this, put a timer, on your phone, have it go off every hour and just breathe for 2 minutes. Just practice a breathing style for 2-3 minutes. And until it becomes something that you remember to do rather than having to just have an alarm to go. And then, as I said, if you can learn to pay attention to what are the signs that you are anxious, then kick in the breathing. Then ground your feet, sit straight, open up your chest, breathe through your belly, however you're doing it, and then just get a nice rhythm and cycle of breath going.
Okay, so the first step we kind of establish is doing the soothing exercises, which is breath work and grounding. The second is, develop some mantras. I'll handle it. That's a good one. What comes after that? What would you advocate as the third step?
One of the things that has helped me a lot is, as a nice guy, I always kind of shied away from challenge, from conflict, from things that frightened me. I kind of, and now I've developed the attitude of, if something scares me or if I'm anxious or avoiding it, I kind of develop attitude. All right, bring it. If my wife gets that look on her face and I know she's going to accuse me of something, I used to be, well, what'd I do? No, I didn't do that. You're always accusing me. You kind of going that nice guy trying to, fix it. Now I go, okay, you want to fight? Come on, let's fight. You can just say you want to fight. You don't even have to accuse me of anything. We can just fight. I can just yell at you if you want me to yell at you. And my wife will go, well, it's not the same. If you're not really mad at me, it's not the same if you're yelling. But I'll make a joke about it. But I'll say, bring it. If you're mad at me, bring it. And so I apply that in lots of areas. Whenever I tend to get scared, I kind of go, okay. I take the breath. I get grounded. And it's all right. Bring it. How am I ever going to learn to deal with this if I don't deal with it now?
Right. So it's push yourself past your comfort zone. So basically, you're walking down the street, you see a cute girl, you want to talk to her, you get really nervous. Your brain is telling you, don't do it. You got a boyfriend, but you push through that and you do it anyway, right? That's basically what you're saying.
And you do, and you even welcome whatever may happen. Say, oh, she might reject me, she might laugh at me, and go, okay, let her reject me, let her laugh at me. I am the storm. Let the storm come to me because I am the storm. To just, and there's just something about just in your mind. I dated a woman for a few months that was a good woman, but she just, when I broke up with her, she said, am I just not crazy enough for you? And she said, well, that could be it. But she would never get mad. And so, if I could tell she was a little bit upset about something, I'd go like that. I'd say, come on, give it to me. I want it. And then after we broke up, we'd still hang out some, and she still liked to come around and, get in my bed every now and then. And one time she was starting to be a little upset at me about something. I said, give it to me. She said, stop that. It turns me on when you do that. I thought, actually, I didn't know that, but I wish I'd known that, So just that, come on, bring it. Whatever we're afraid of, man, take a breath, open to it. Let's go. Come on, game on.
No, I think you're 100% spot on about that. I mean, I think a big thing with nice guys is they tend to run away from conflict, right?
Yeah.
They always are conflict avoidant, right? Always taking the path of least resistance, right? And that could be with anything. Maybe they're talking with their friend is being a little disrespectful, but they don't want to say anything because they don't want to rock the boat. Maybe the girl's asking them to do something crazy that they don't want to do. Hey, can you drive around for 3 a.m. and do the shit for me? They don't want to do it. But again, they want to take the path of least resistance. Maybe they're at a bar and they're with their girlfriend and someone says something and they're like, okay, I want to avoid conflict, right? So I don't think you should be actively trying to start fights or anything, but I actually think that being open to conflict and sometimes instead of running away from the storm, walking into it is a better strategy. And I think as a side note, what I've noticed, I've been doing cold approach pickup for, over a decade, right? I've been going up talking to girls and some of them have boyfriends and sometimes the boyfriends are there. I have never once been in a fight, right? And I think a big part of avoiding a fight is if the other man sees that you're not going to backtrack. You're willing to stand your ground. It's almost like an animal type of instinct, right? Like if the
Sure.
bear's running at you, if you run away, you're fucked. But if you stand up to the bear, you have a somewhat of a decent chance of the bear like backing off. So I think it's like that. So you're not escalating the situation. You're not saying like, yo, fuck you, dude. But you're just standing there and you'd be like, yeah, I didn't know. Your girlfriend's very attractive. Like that, then I think that's actually a better way of avoiding the fight than trying to run away from the conflict.
Yeah. In my experience, again, I was a conflict avoider. My mother, when I start dating new women, my mother would always say, "Oh, Bobby never did like conflict." I'm going, "Who the fuck likes conflict?" But I tend to marry women who do. So apparently there are people that like conflict. But so I've worked hard on that one of leaning into the conflict, saying, "Okay." I had two situations today that actually just felt so good because they were a barometer of my issues around conflict. One was I actually got like 3 different emails in the last few days of 3 different guys who I don't know said, "I'm going to be in Puerto Vallarta X days. Can I buy you a beer?" And I don't really want to go hang out with a stranger just because they happen to be in Puerto Vallarta. I mean, this is this is my home, and I have a full life, and I don't take time out just because a stranger wants to buy me a beer.
Right.
But there's that part of, well, they're being nice. I don't want to hurt their feelings. So I wrote one of them back today. I said, "Yeah, I know you're in town." Said, "It's a beautiful town." I said, "But my policy is I don't take time out of my schedule to meet with people I don't personally know." And it felt good to just say no.
Yeah.
I gave him a good enough reason without it just being, "No, asshole, don't you're a jerk for asking." But then I had another situation where I had a contractual situation with some people a few years ago where they did a translation for me. And then the translation wasn't super high quality, but I had an agreement with them. I'd give them, X percentage on sales of that book that they translated. And then I had it retranslated recently, took it from just being an ebook to being a print on demand and an Audible. So it's a Spanish version of No More Mr. Nice Guy. And I wrote them and I said, because I can no longer separate out how I get royalties from the 3 books, I'm going to give you 25% on all 3 versions, not just 50% on the ebooks. I can't separate it out. Well, they write this long email back and wanting to negotiate all of this and, and this and that. And, we want to revisit this. And I just wrote back and they said, "This is not a negotiation. Here's what I'm offering. You're coming out ahead. Here's how I'll send you your money." And it just felt really good to think that they're going to be upset at me, blah, blah. Yeah, I don't know. They might still be upset at me. They might lawyer up. I don't know. But it felt good to just begin with, this is not a negotiation. Here's what I'm offering, and here's why. And I suggest you take it because it's a better deal than what you had before. And it's kind of like they were wanting to be petty. I'm going, don't be petty. This is a good deal.
It feels really good when you stand up for yourself. There's something, you feel like a natural high when every time you stand up for yourself. It's just this good feeling. As a side note, that's a good choice of location, Puerto Vallarta. I was there 2 years ago. Beautiful place. Beautiful.
It's beautiful. I love it.
Yeah. But okay, so going back to what we're discussing, I think, we're talking about, not running away from confrontations. Now, I think there needs to be a caveat to this because I do see sometimes with, are you familiar with like the Fresh and Fit podcast by any chance?
With which one?
The Fresh and Fit podcast.
That doesn't ring a bell. I don't listen to a lot of podcasts.
Okay. Well, so basically I do see sometimes people go too far to the other extreme where they actually actively trying to create conflict, I think, as a result of insecurity. So meaning like, okay, you and I having a conversation and maybe you make a joke, right? Like, okay, let's just take what happened earlier, right? Like you had the shirt or whatever. Like I make a joke and be like, "Oh yeah, I guess someone got out of bed the wrong side this morning," right? I'm just making a joke. But what some people might do who are ultra sensitive is to be like, "Dude, what does that mean?" Right? They get aggressive, overly aggressive on a situation doesn't call for it, which I think comes from an insecurity that you feel like that people are always disrespecting you because you're not worthy of respect. So I do think you have to be careful that it doesn't go too far in the other direction. And then you're just basically trying to create conflict when no conflict needs to exist. Do you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah. And No More Mr. Nice Guy, where I talk about boundaries, because I didn't learn about boundaries till I was in my 30s, in my second marriage, and already had a PhD in marriage and family therapy. Nobody ever taught me about boundaries. You could say, yes, no, stop. I'm leaving now. I'm getting off the phone. And so I say in the book that a lot of nice guys, because they never had, most people never have boundaries because we're not taught to have boundaries as children. What we're taught is the big people can do whatever they want to the little people because they're big and they're little and you can't stop it. So we grow up to be big people that don't know we can say no, stop, or I'm leaving. And so what I found is when I start teaching nice guys to have boundaries, they often turn into what I call kamikaze boundary setters. And I give them, they'll pull out a chainsaw to deal with the situation when a
Right.
fly swatter would have gotten the job done. And that is pretty normal actually. To if you've always been passive and let people do whatever you want, and then all of a sudden, well, I'm going to set a boundary on that one. It's kind of like we come out with all fours and sledgehammer and chainsaw and knives and when we could have just said, hey man, please don't do that. That hurt. But it really does take time to kind of learn where the we don't have to do the 360 tomahawk dunk on everybody. We can do a little finesse move. And it's just practice. It just takes practice to learn. You don't have to go to the extreme to learn to say stop, or that hurt my feelings, or did you mean that hurt my feelings? There's much more subtle ways of doing it, but it does usually take teaching and some practice and repetition.
I do also think people respect you more if you're calm and grounded. So, for example, I don't know, like someone is being disrespectful to you, and I think you will get much more respect, not only from that person, but from the surrounding people, if there are other people there. If you're very calm in expressing your boundary, like, hey, that really wasn't cool. Do not do that again. Versus like, yo, what the fuck? Don't fucking ever do that again. Like, you're just going to get so much more respect if you do it the first way from people.
Well, I'll give the example, like my second wife, borderline personality. So it's just, you never knew, which personality I was getting from her. And she liked to fight. She liked to start fights. And I remember, I used to always try to talk her down, talk her through, get her over it. When I learned to set boundaries, like I remember, I'd be at work and she'd be calling me up and just dumping and unloading. And, I'd say, listen, this isn't going anywhere. I'm going to get off the phone. I said, call me back when you're in a better mood. And I would just hang up. I'm hanging up back when you had hang up phones, right? So, and I wasn't rude. I wasn't hurtful. I didn't slam the phone down. And I just call me back when you're in a better mood. And then like 20, 30 minutes later, she'd call back. She goes, I think I know what was bothering me. She'd be in a better mood. All because I said, this isn't going anywhere. I'm getting off the phone. Call me when you're in a better mood. It was a calm, firm boundary. And it let her deal with her own internal stuff instead of thinking she needed to be, puking it out all on me, because I would just, in the past, would just sit and listen. And now I said, no, I'm not going to listen. If you figure it out, call me back. Yeah. And she'd be in a good mood when she called back. I'd go, wow, how come no one taught me that a long time ago?
No, you're 100% spot on. I've noticed this with my own relationships that, I used to do the same thing you used to do, which is just kind of talk the girl down, walk her through it. And I found that was significantly less effective than separating myself from the situation, saying, okay, I understand that's how you feel. Why don't you take a minute, think on it, and we can talk when you're more grounded. And usually by the time she calls you a second time, she has already solved the problem. So I completely agree with you. That's such a better method of dealing with like a girlfriend or a wife that you're fighting. Yeah, I've experienced that in my own like relationships as well. So you're spot on about that. Okay, so we discussed the 3 steps. Is there a step 4?
Is this steps of dealing with anxiety and soothing ourselves?
Just overcoming being a nice guy. That's kind
okay. Overcome. Well, we were talking about the anxiety steps of both, getting grounded, breathing, mantras, welcoming it. When it comes to overcoming nice guys, let me kind of walk you through where I would just say, if I had to lay out like maybe a 4-step plan.
Okay. Yeah.
Step 1 is find safe people. I say that in No More Mr. Nice Guy. I say it all the time. You can't break out of nice guy syndrome by yourself. Because guys, one of the problems is we're in our head, we're in our echo chamber, we're talking inside our own head all the time. And we can't separate our own internal neuroses from reality. And so you got to get safe people. You can learn to begin to reveal your shame, the things you feel bad about yourself, the things you've done, the things you think you make you a bad person. If people knew this about you, they wouldn't love you. And you reveal that to safe people, a therapist, a coach, a men's group, a good friend, a minister, whatever. And they give you feedback and say, well, that doesn't make you a bad person. Or actually, what you just shared is pretty common. Almost everybody feels that way or does those things, and gives you more accurate information about you. And that allows you to start feeling freer to just be you and not thinking you got to either become what you think other people want you to be or hide things about you that might get a negative reaction. So step number 1, I say, is get safe people. I think since we're talking mainly to men, get a men's group. get a men's group that's led by someone that knows what they're doing, a good coach, good therapist, where you can be real, reveal yourself, get support, get connection with men, learn how to build bonds with men. And I think the bonds we build with men are actually the building blocks of how we learn to relate to women. I think if you skip the connection with men and go straight to, I want to learn how to connect with women, because of that basically that, well, we want them to have sex with us. So, it's kind of like that amps up our anxiety, and when we skip it. So being in a group with men helps you learn how to really connect, how to be authentic, how to be vulnerable, because we don't have an agenda with each other. And so, but with women, we have an agenda. So find safe people to do the work with. Then I talk about learning to soothe yourself. Soothe your anxiety is another important piece. Another important piece is learning to be honest. Ironically, nice guys are often anything but nice and honest. We can tell an out and out lie and still think I'm an honest person. We'll shade the truth. We'll leave things out. So I found learning to really be honest and transparent is a big thing for nice guys. And this plays out especially in relationships. I've worked with enough couples, enough women, and I tell guys this: most women can handle a difficult truth, but they can't handle being lied to. If she accuses you of something and you did something, you fucked up, tell her, yeah, I did. I fucked up. I messed up. And, I don't know how she's going to react. Every woman's different. But women know if you've told them a difficult truth, and they know if you tell them a difficult truth, they can probably trust you on everything else. But, guys will tell these little white lies about stuff. They'll say, did you do that? No, I didn't do that. But they know good and well. Their friend saw you doing that. And then, well, if you lied about that, what else will you lie about? So learning to tell the truth is really crucial. Another important piece that we kind of touched on a little bit, you mentioned, that litmus test of doing things for other people. Learning to make your own needs a priority is really a big piece for nice guys. And so, like when I was married to my second wife and doing my own personal work and writing No More Mr. Nice Guy, I went on a 1-year moratorium where I did not do anything for her. No surprises, no gifts, no cards, nothing special. Because I always did that aren't I good? She'll like me. She'll appreciate me. She'll think I'm great. She'll want to have sex with me. And it didn't work. And so I went on a 1-year moratorium. I didn't give her anything. And every time I had the impulse to do something for her, get her something, buy her something, I had to do something for me. And so that switched around me starting to do good things for me. From there, I then got better at surrounding myself with people, friends, professionals, whatever, who wanted to help me get my needs met. And I became better at communicating to people what I wanted, what I needed, so that they could know that. So making our needs a priority, learning to get our needs met is another big, powerful piece of that recovery. We already mentioned something about boundaries. Learning to set boundaries is another important piece of that, because boundaries are what let people get close to us. If we don't know we have boundaries, if we don't know we can say, no, stop, I go away, I'm getting off the phone. If we don't know we have boundaries, we're going to have walls. We'll just avoid people. We won't let them get close. And I think most of us do want to have people close to us. Boundaries is how we can actually do that. The better boundaries we have, the closer we can let people in, because we can know if they get too close, or it's time for them to go, or they did something that didn't feel good. We can say something. We can do something. Yeah. So boundaries is a big piece of that. So there's about 5 or 6 pieces right there that I think are crucial in nice guy recovery.
One thing I would add to that is self-awareness, because I think you have to understand why you're doing what you're doing. So if you're like, I consider myself a pretty kind person. Like, I'm kind at the very least to like my girlfriend, my friends, my family, right? And I try to be kind to people in general, right? But I'm kind to people because I want to be kind, not because I want something in exchange. So if the reason you're doing this nice thing is because you want something in return, then that's a bad idea. You shouldn't do that, right?
That's the covert contracts we were talking about.
Yeah. If you're just doing it because that's who you are and you enjoy being kind, then that's a different story. So I do think that's like having that self-awareness. And I think one of the biggest things that you touched on, well, boundaries are huge. Obviously, first of all, people will respect you a lot more if you have boundaries. Women will not respect you if you don't have boundaries. And I think that once respect goes out the window, attraction follows pretty closely. So you can't really have a relationship where the woman is attracted, but she doesn't respect the guy. There has to be respect. on her part. And if you don't have boundaries, like nicest girl in the world could be the best person ever, Mother Teresa, she will eventually lose respect for you. So yeah, I think that's very important. But I think the whole just being upfront and transparency thing is also huge. So typically, what a nice guy will do is hide his intentions for like 5 years when he meets a girl. But I would almost advocate going a little bit to the other extreme, at least temporarily, and just being actually like extremely upfront to the point where you're like, hey, I'm gonna be honest, like I really find you attractive. So I just want to be clear that I'm not trying to be your friend. Like that's a little
Yeah.
bit like uncalibrated. Like that's not optimal game. Obviously, it's better to be a little bit more smooth and seductive, right? But like you can't go from 0 to 100. So you might go from 0 to being like that very explicit, and then you find like a middle ground where you can be upfront in a more playful way. But
Yeah.
I think in the beginning stages as a recovering nice guy, you should be like almost ultra like forward and transparent, and just be like, hey, listen, I find you really cute, so I want to take you on a date. Like, there's no fucking around. You're
Well,
not.
and you're right, because nice guys have this weird idea that if we can hide our sexual agenda from women, maybe they'll want to get naked with us.
Right.
I mean, the math on that doesn't work. Okay, I'm going to pretend like I don't want to have sex with you, and then you'll want to have sex with me. That
Right.
doesn't work. And the other thing I tell men is women don't put a guy in the friend zone. Men put themselves there.
Yeah.
Another thing that I tell men is women don't fuck a guy because they've gotten to know him. They get to know the guy they want to fuck. And they usually know within 30 seconds. So I'm told, they feel it visually, viscerally,
Yeah.
whatever that word is. It's getting late. But they know if there's a possibility that they might have sex with you at some point. They're not sure, but they know, but they also know if they're not. And they know that right away. And they really change their mind just because they find out that you're nice. And then here's the thing I tell guys, women know why we're talking to them.
Yeah.
They know. They know we're talking to them because they have boobs and a vagina. They know that. Now, maybe some women kind of fool themselves and thinking, I'm just so special, men just want to walk up and talk to me. But most women know it. And it's funny, when I talk to women, like if I'm on an airplane and, I'm talking and they say, what do you do? I work with men. What do you teach men? Blah, blah, blah. And they find out if I teach men to date. Women, they always ask the same questions. They go, how come, they always want to know, how come if I'm like somewhere and I notice a guy and I look his way and smile, how come he won't walk over and talk to me? And I go, because you're scary. And they go, why? I go, because you're scary. And they go, well, okay, how about, we're talking, we're having a good conversation. I'm laughing, I'm leaning in, touching his arm, I'm giving him all the signals. And then when he'll talk about everything under the sun and never ask me for my number, and then kind of like stammer and shake my hand and say, nice to meet you. Maybe we'll bump into each other. Why don't they fucking ask for my number? Because you're scary. And they go, why? Because you're scary. Women are scary to men, especially if we think they're attractive. We give them all the power, and now they have the power to reject us. But the thing is, like you say, if you can just have the attitude of, she knows why I'm talking to her. She knows I'm talking to her because she has boobs and breasts and I want to see her naked. You can actually have that agenda, as you said, without being rude. But you know that she knows why you're talking to her, so you can be bolder. You can touch her a little bit more. You can lean in. You can tease her a little bit more. You can tell her to do something. You can do the things that begin to amp up the attraction in a woman that if she's already thinking, yeah, maybe, and you just keep driving that up. But all the ways that men are passive and avoidant and don't risk is all the ways they put themselves in the friend zone, where the woman thought, well, I thought he was kind of cute, but you know what? I'm not going to chase him. And, they just move on.
Yeah. Well, I think boldness in of itself is very, very attractive to women. A guy who's bald, who's not afraid to go for what he wants. That is extremely attractive. A man who's very risk averse is not attractive, right?
Not at all. Because our ancestors were warriors and hunters,
Right.
and so like if we're risk adverse, like a woman's going to feel safe with that. And I tell guys, if a man interacts with a woman with confidence, with boldness, she experiences the exact same brain chemicals that the guy would experience if she lifted her shirt and showed him her tits. We don't have to think, do I like those? It's just wired to have a brain reaction that feels good. It's true in women. When a guy is confident, bold, something's wired into them by evolution to feel safe with that and want to open with that. And so if we're being anxious and looking down and not being bold and being risk adverse, there's nothing that's going to flip that evolutionary switch in the woman that says, maybe.
Yeah. What I always tell my audience, if you have a choice between going on a date with a girl and trying to kiss her a few times and getting rejected, or going on a date with that same girl and not making a move and not getting rejected, the first option is actually better. I'd rather go for the kiss a few times, get rejected, because at least the girl will respect you more.
Yeah.
And your chances of getting a second date, and this is coming from personal experience that my clients, are a lot higher.
Yes.
Versus if you don't make a move, your chance of getting a second date are like slim to none.
I tell guys, make it your agenda to try to get to rejection quickly. You know, when I started working with single guys, I quickly came to realize that everybody's afraid of getting rejected.
Right.
And I try to convince them rejection doesn't hurt. And oh yeah, it does. It does. And yeah, I quit trying to convince men that rejection doesn't hurt, because it really doesn't. The stories we make up about it can beat the hell out of us.
Right.
But a woman having low interest and giving us a phone number, why does that hurt? I mean, there's no pain in that. So what I would say is be so bold. I'd send guys out, take a buddy, get a buddy or two, go out, have fun, and one night try to get 5 women to reject you. Now, don't be an ass, don't go be a prick, but just walk up and say, hey, my name is Robert. You're great. I want to call you. Give me your number. You just do something that direct that that she's got to give. And I've done that. I've done it at times, and I would approach the most kind of inappropriate women, like just really young, way like granddaughter age kind of women. And I'd get their numbers. I wouldn't get rejected, mainly because you're so bold. You're not bringing that anxiety that comes from the fear of getting rejected. You're trying to get rejected. And then if you do get rejected, you kind of do a little happy dance with go, I actually felt pretty good. It didn't hurt at all. I can do that again. And if you go do that 3-5 times in a night, try to be so bold. Again, don't be an ass, but just be so direct. Say, hey, you're the hottest woman in the room. I just got to take you out next week. Give me your number. Anything where she's got to give you a yes or no answer real quick.
Yeah.
And just practice doing that until it doesn't trigger any anxiety for you.
Yeah, it's really funny because you and I come from 2 completely different generations, 2 completely different backgrounds, communities, but we actually advocate for a lot of really, really the same stuff. I do this. Are you familiar with something called the Demonic Confidence Challenge?
You're going to have to tell me about that one.
Okay. It's very similar to what you're describing. It's a little bit more intricate, though. So it's a 21-day confidence challenge. So the point is to exactly what you said, help guys get over rejection. So day 1 is very easy. Day 1, you're going up to a girl and just asking her what time it is, and that's it, right? Day 5, you're going up to the girl, inviting her out for coffee. Day 10, you're going up to the girl and telling her you find her very attractive. Day 19, 20, you're going up to the girl and you're saying, hey, I find you very attractive. Would you like to have sex with me, right? You're being really, really bold.
Love it.
That's kind of, it's the progression, right? And what's interesting, I personally did this challenge myself, and you would think that if you go up to a girl and you say, hey, do you want to have sex with me? What's your initial reaction? You're going to get slapped. They're going to tell you to fuck off. They're going to call the police, right? That's just, I think, something every guy's going to think. What happened when I did this challenge, and I've heard a lot of these stories, is I either got, oh, I really appreciate the offer, but unfortunately I have a boyfriend, but you're cute. Try another girl. Or I got one girl who was like, I totally would. My plane leaves in half an hour. Where do you live? Like, so it's reactions that you would not expect. Now, of course, that's not going to happen most of the time. Most of the girls are going to say no. But the point is the reactions are never as bad as you expect them to have. And if you can go up to a girl and ask her to have sex with you, then you can certainly go up to a girl and just chit chat with her, right? So basically what you're doing is you're really stretching your comfort zone so that things that are like here don't make you nervous anymore. So it's basically exactly what you're describing.
I love it. I love that hierarchy, that pyramid of just, every day you're going to challenge yourself a little bit more.
Yeah. No, I think that stuff is great. I think the biggest thing that stands in guys' ways is themselves, right? And their limiting beliefs. Well, actually, that leads me to another question. Limiting beliefs are huge. A lot of guys, for example, have a lot of negative limiting beliefs. That it can range from I'll never get a girl to like me to I'll never get a girl who's a 7 to like me. I'll never get a girl who's a stunner to like me, right? There's various levels of limiting beliefs. How would you advocate for guys who have clear limiting beliefs, whether it comes with women, with finances, with career? I'll never have my own business. I'll never be able to, pay for a house. How do you help guys get over their limiting beliefs?
Yeah, I'm doing something right now that actually we're going to wrap it up in one more week. I started this challenge. It's an 8 week. I call it Full Achiever Challenge. It was part of a promotion I did, and 12 guys signed up, paid $1,000 each, and we meet every Thursday morning for an hour. I do quick Q&A. I lead them in some kind of practice. Like tomorrow, I'm going to do the Wim Hof with death visualization, and they're divided into two smaller groups of 6 each. They each have a coach. They meet with him 1 hour every week. We have a Signal forum where we can check in with each other on Signal. And I give them video assignments, like, both a brag video, goal video, resistance video, gratitude video. And what the main thrust of the whole 60-day challenge is for them they have to pick a goal that stretches them way out of their comfort zone. Doesn't matter what it is. Some of the guys picked approaching women. One guy create a music album, and others do a Muay Thai fight. It's just something that gets you way out of your comfort zone. And then the main thing I have them do is just keep observing and checking in with what comes up. What is the resistance? What is their projection? What is their self-limiting beliefs? Oh, I'm not good enough. Who am I? Or I'm going to be found out, or I'm too busy, or I'll fail at it, or it's a waste of time, or, and they keep sharing this with each other. And it's been like amazing watching everything they share in their videos and on Signal with each other of how they can actually talk, out loud as the observer, the noticer of all their self-limiting beliefs. Now, I don't think we usually notice our self-limiting beliefs until we challenge ourselves in some significant way. We have to get out of our comfort zone. As long as we're in comfort zone, as long as we're just doing status quo stuff, just hanging out around the house, watching Netflix, surfing the internet, smoking dope, video games, whatever, those voices don't make much noise. They're just kind of quietly humming in the background. Yeah, take another hit, have another can of beer, let's look at some more porn. You don't need to go out tonight. You're too tired. They just keep us stuck in status quo. But if you challenge yourself and get a support system, trying to do it by yourself often fails, because you take a step or two, they kick in, they start screaming at you, and you go, oh, they're true. They're correct. Women aren't going to want to talk to me. Who am I to create a record album? I'm going to get beat up if I do this Taekwondo or Muay Thai thing. And so you have to have a support system of people you're checking in with, and you find out they've got a lot of the same inner noise that you do, but you don't hear it till you actually challenge yourself and step out. And so, even like, for example, when you started doing a podcast, there's probably some voices you had that started going, who am I? Who's going to want to come on my show? Is anybody going to listen to it? Well, you can watch that noise, right? You can breathe. You can talk yourself through it. You can talk to a friend, get it out of your head, say, I'm going to do it anyway because I want to find out, whatever you do. But the best way I know to challenge self-limiting beliefs is to challenge yourself. So I'm a big fan. I'm a quote relationship expert. My doctorate's in marriage and family. I also teach guys to date. So I'm a big fan that if you do any kind of relationship consciously, because I don't think, for example, lifelong pair bonded monogamous relationships with the opposite sex are in our DNA. I don't think they're natural.
We agree on that completely.
I don't think dating is in our DNA. I mean, we've only been dating for less than 100 years. I mean, used to be marriages were arranged, so you just dated your sister's best friend or somebody you knew from church. Right. So all of these things are not natural. So if you say, I'm going to learn how to date, I'm going to learn how to approach women, I'm going to learn how to be bold, I'm going to learn how to, ask women out, I'm going to learn how to, face. If you can be conscious, that'll trigger every one of your self-limiting beliefs, and you'll want to shut down and close off. And that's why having support systems. You mentioned Brian Began and he's fearless, and going to do even like a pickup boot camp. If you can be with a bunch of other guys and you're doing it together, you're getting feedback, you're getting support, it gives you the courage to keep leaning into it. And the same thing's true in relationships. If we do them consciously, if we set boundaries, if we ask for what we want, if we say no, if we speak the truth, those are all scary things. All of our noise is going to say, don't do that. She's going to leave you. She's going to kill you, or she's going to, smear you on social media, whatever. Do it anyway and listen to the voices, talk to a buddy, talk to your group of guys, talk to your gang, whatever. Have people in your life you can share that with, and they can support you and say, no, go for it. It's a good idea. You didn't do anything wrong. So that's the best way I know to challenge SLB, self-limiting beliefs, as I call them, is challenge yourself, get out of your comfort zone, and have a good support system that you can, share that stuff with as you notice it coming up.
I largely agree with you. This is kind of how I look at this. I deal with this with my clients all the time. So vast majority of my clients have some kind of limiting belief. For example, I have a lot of Indian clients, and the limiting belief they have is that, I'll never be able to get a white girl. I can only get another Indian girl through arranged marriage, but there's no way I can get even a decent looking white girl because I'm Indian. Girls don't like Indian guys. And you'll hear the same thing. Girls don't like Asian guys. Girls don't like guys who are shorter. Girls don't like just insert.
I hear that all the time. I have an Asian client who's a doctor, just told me that this week. Right. I like white women. And he goes, but there's the stigma that women don't like Asian men.
Right. So I think that when I'm coaching someone, I can't get them to completely change their limiting beliefs. So what I try to do is just get them to suspend disbelief. I say, okay, instead of changing your mind, can you try to be agnostic on this? So instead of saying, women don't like Asian guys, try to say, I don't know if women like Asian guys or not. I don't have enough data yet. So I just try to get them be agnostic on the issue. Because if I try to get them go completely in the other direction, they'll just fight me on it, right? So I just try to get them to be agnostic. And then I say, just for a period of time. And then what you're saying is, let's challenge that belief and let's get you positive reference experiences. Because for that Asian guy, if he can hook up with one white girl, then suddenly that's counter evidence to his limiting belief. And then it's kind of like a scale. And the more evidence you stack on the side, eventually the scale tips over and the limiting belief basically goes away because you have so much supporting evidence. I think the second thing, and I think this can be helpful in expediting this, is look for people who are in your shoes who've done the thing that you're limited by. So look for other Asian. I'll do this all the time. My coaching sessions, when I have an Asian client, it's like, I don't think Asian. I'll be like, okay, well, let me link you to 3 or 4 other Asian guys who are exactly like you, who had success, right? Why don't you talk to them? Or for whatever, it's like, just give them a role model or someone who was able to accomplish what they did. And I think that can go a long way into suspending disbelief. And for whatever thing you're trying to accomplish, there's someone who was in your shoes, many someone's, who was able to accomplish that, right? So they exist. It's just a matter of finding them, right? So I think that's kind of the way I've always approached it from a coaching perspective.
It's funny. We started this call talking about therapy, and a lot of the things you've shared, or you probably know this, but you're actually a really good cognitive behavioral therapist. you probably studied a lot of CBT, because everything you've shared like that's really good CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy stuff. And so you're right. That's why I couldn't talk guys out of that rejection doesn't hurt. If they were, no, I know rejection hurts. Every time I get rejected, it hurts. I couldn't talk them out of it. So I quit trying to talk them out of it. I just gave them an experience that might change their mind through practice. And again, the best way to get out of these self-limiting beliefs is we have to know them. We have to know what they are, and then we have to find ways to challenge them. I remember I had one experience several years ago. I'd gone for a run on a Sunday afternoon. I was in Seattle, suburb of Seattle. And I went down to a little park on the lake near my apartment and just had my shirt off. I'm sitting on the grass, beautiful sunny, Sunday day, I guess. And there's a woman sitting on the grass by herself, white string bikini, spectacular body. So I went and just kind of sat about 10 feet behind her in the grass. And she got up and walked out on the dock. And I came to realize maybe long after the fact, she probably did that so I would, get a better look at her. She walked out, came walking back, sat down again. And just spectacular body. And my voice in my head, I actually heard a voice say, women like that don't talk to you. Women like that aren't interested in you. But I sat with it for a minute. I thought, wait a minute. My second wife was gorgeous. Everywhere I went, people said, that's your wife. She's gorgeous. I mean, everybody said the same thing. Men and women both hit on her. She was so good looking. And so I thought, My second wife was beautiful. I've dated beautiful women. Why are my voices telling me a woman like that wouldn't be interested in me? So I decided I didn't want the voices to win. I had nothing to prove. I was agnostic, right? Like you said. And I decided I'm just going to go test that voice. I just slid down, a little bit down on the grass and got up beside her. And I thought, oh, there is a God. She was reading a book that I had read. And I'm thinking, how cool is that? If I had not slid down by her, I wouldn't have known that. So the book was called A Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. It's a story about an autistic boy. And so I started talking to her about the book. And we got to talking. Long story short, she spent every night, she was on vacation from Germany, visiting with a friend. And she spent every night for the next week in my bed, And I think she was falling in love with me by the time she went back to Germany. Smart pharmacist, ran a family business, bilingual, sexy as hell. And my voice said, oh, women like her don't talk to guys like you. Now, the great takeaway of that is I've never let that voice win again since that day. It is never won again. Now, what I usually find is, because I talk to everybody everywhere I go, a lot of times I'll walk away from talking to somebody, I'll go, that woman was really attractive. And it's like that wasn't even the main thing on my radar. I was just talking to her like I talk to everybody. And I thought, how cool is that a woman being really attractive doesn't make me anxious anymore. But it took, challenging that voice in my head that attractive women don't talk to me. And wow, I'm not going to believe that one again.
Yeah, that voice exists for every person. I think the interesting thing, I don't think the voice ever completely goes away. But what does happen with enough experience is that you learn to separate your actions from that voice. So the voice becomes in the first time you hear that voice, it's like it feels very strong. It's like someone speaking through a loudspeaker. Eventually,
yeah. Oh, I heard it. It was loud and clear. Women like that don't talk to guys like you.
But eventually you get enough separation that the voice is just like someone whispering. It's there, you can hear it, but it's not loud. It doesn't really affect.
Just smile at it. You go, yeah.
But I think the very interesting thing that happens is every time you listen to that voice and you don't do that thing, the voice gets a little stronger. So there's actually a cost to not taking action. If you see an attractive girl and you don't talk to her, it's not like you remain exactly where you are. You actually are a slightly bit worse because that voice now has a little bit more I don't know, like power.
It's more believable. It's more because if you don't go talk to the attractive woman, it reinforces, oh, women like that don't talk to me.
Right.
Well, exactly. Why? Because I never talk to them. That's why they don't. And that just keeps building up to where attractive women never talk to me.
Right. So I think you have to fight with that voice every time. And every time you fight it, it gets a little bit less. But I think the misconception guys have is well, I can just do it next time, right? I don't lose anything by not talking to that girl.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't physically lose anything, but that voice gets just a little bit stronger. And if you listen to it long enough, it's going to be really, really strong. And it's going to be really, really hard to overcome that voice. But the more you do it, the easier it becomes to overcome that voice. And eventually it's really easy. It's barely there. So yeah, I think that's a very interesting phenomenon. I also want to ask you this question on a slightly different note. Are you familiar with the book Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz?
Read it many, many years ago in grad school. It's been a long time. But yeah, I am familiar with it.
What do you think about that concept of everyone having basically that inner identity, which basically determines, pretty much everything, how you live your life?
Yeah, again, it's been a long time since I read the book, so I'm not gonna comment on it with any kind of intelligence. But here's what I think is that from a developmental point of view, when we're children, we're born with certain temperaments. And the longer I've been working with people, the whole nature nurture thing, are we who we are because of our experiences or because of who we are? I'm coming more and more to believe it's the temperament we were born with probably has the bigger factor. Because that determines how we actually deal with the experiences we have in life. Because you can see 3 kids in the same family with 3 temperaments experiencing similar things and handle them totally different. Mm-hmm. So I think what happens in childhood is we begin to develop our identity, who we are, by internalizing our experiences in family and the world. We internalize it at an emotional level first, then more of an intellectual level. And we develop, these belief systems, these self-limiting beliefs. Who am I? How does the world work? How do I fit in the world? And we do this at a very young age. And then we hit adolescence with a lot of hormones, a lot of rapid development of the body and the brain. And we're trying to really fit in socially, find our place. All of what we brought to adolescence, we might experiment with trying different things. We might color our hair, get a piercing, get a tattoo, act tough, be nice, whatever. We'll experiment trying to figure out what works, but we're pretty much still working with a natural temperament and those beliefs we've already been internalizing at an emotional level. And by the time we get through adolescence, that's pretty well solidified. And by the time we hit young adulthood, how we see ourselves in the world is pretty well solid. And about the only things that I found will change that is, well, there's a lot of things that can change it, is some form of big stick, hitting bottom, crisis. Maybe you quit drinking and go to AA, or you go in the military and they straighten you out, or you find Jesus and get religion, or you get married and have kids and you straighten your life up, or something significant happens that you go, I've got to interact with the world differently than I have been. And we go looking for answers. Maybe we find good answers. Maybe we get with a good therapist or a good coach, or some other good situation that really opens up other ways of viewing self and the world. And sometimes we don't. Sometimes we just get into the same situations and just keep repeating them, and just keeps reinforcing our distorted view of self and the world. But I think it usually takes something, some wake-up call of some sort, to say, wait a minute, I'm not happy, or my relationships keep going the same direction, or I never get into a relationship, or I always get stuck in the same place at work and I never move up. What's happening? And if you can go looking for answers and find good answers, we can start kind of stepping back and looking at what are these beliefs I have about myself and the world. And as you've already mentioned, if we can just be the observer of these things, have some self-awareness, and get some better tools, get better coaching, get better strategies, get better roadmaps, we can try different things on for size. Like, try on, just go talk to her, instead of going the other direction. Try it on for size. Be agnostic about it. But again, I think that almost always requires some outside assistance. Whether it's a 12-step group, a men's group, a fearless program, a religious group, something. It requires us to get some kind of instruction and guidance that helps us see that there's other possibilities than the ones we've been packing around since we were 3 months old, that I'm this and the world is this.
Yeah. And that could just be a YouTube video or a book or something that gives you an outside perspective.
It could be. I mean, I hear people all the time say, Robert, I've read every self-help book in the world, but it wasn't until I read No More Mr. Nice Guy, everything clicked. Well, that's not going to click for everybody. But enough people tell me that I know there are certain things, like you say, a book, you hear somebody, on a video, on the radio, a podcast, and you go, wow, that's a whole different way of looking at things that I'd never thought of. And you dig in deeper and you find, wow, there's other ways to view who I am and how the world works than the way I've been doing it.
Yeah, like we're talking about like changing who you are as a person. I think there's more than one way to skin a cat, but I think like the way that's worked for me is kind of what you're describing, like is becoming agnostic on the issue, having some motivation, and getting reference experiences, or that's what we call them in this community, of that contradict my limiting beliefs, and then I get to the next level. But then that comes with a new set of limiting beliefs, right? And then
always.
Yeah, like I was poor for part of my life, right? Like after college, and like my limiting belief was maybe I'll never make more than I'll never make six figures, right? And then I make six figures, I'm like, okay, but I'll never make like mid six figures. I'm always going to be 100,000, right? So it's like these plateaus that you break through. So that's kind of always been my way. It sounds like that's kind of what's been your way. But what I find interesting is psychocybernetics takes a completely different approach to changing who you are as a person. And basically what they advocate is doing like very strong visualization exercises where you sit down for 30 minutes every day and you're visualizing yourself living the life of someone that you want to be. So for example, you're really scared of talking to girls, or you don't make much money, you visualize yourself making a lot of money, how that would make you feel, how good it would feel to take care of your mom, how great it would feel to pay your bills on time. You're really, it's a very feeling based thing. You're trying to visualize the feelings that you're going to get. And in theory, again, I've never really tried this, I just know the theory, But the theory is, again, is that if you do that, for a long enough period, that the actions are actually just going to follow from that because you've actually reprogrammed your subconscious. So
Right.
I was just curious if you had like any thoughts about that, because I
Well,
personally never tried it, but it seemed interesting to me.
well, I know Joe Dispenza comes from a different bent, but he talks about the same thing. That if we can visualize any possibility in the quantum field, we can manifest that. We can, and he does exercises to help you feel the way you would feel if you were in that place. So that seems to be a key part. And you mentioned that. What would the feelings be if this was my life? And I know when I was in graduate school, I did something very much like that where I had to get my PhD, I had to have two research tools. One of them had to be a foreign language. So I had to pass a proficiency test of a foreign language. And I chose Spanish and never knew I'd be actually living in Mexico and married to a Mexican woman that doesn't speak English. So it might come in handy to know Spanish. But I struggled. I struggled in that course, and I can't tell you, probably 2 or 3 times I thought about just dropping out of that course. But I knew if I didn't pass the proficiency test, it would block my whole PhD path. I had to pass a proficiency test. So what I would do is I would visualize myself. I'd sit in my little study in my house, and I would visualize me having my PhD and being in private practice as a therapist. I was living in North Texas at the time, and I'd lived in northern Arkansas, and there's a little town, Springfield, Missouri. I liked the little town; wasn't too big, wasn't too small, and I visualized myself having an office in a glass building, and I was driving to my office, driving my Mazda RX-7, and having this really cool car, really cool office, and a great building, sitting down with nice furniture, seeing clients, and I would just keep doing that visualization to see the end results of what me sticking it out in the Spanish class was going to get for me. And so it did work. I just kept visualizing results, and I go, I won't get those results if I stop the Spanish course. I either finish it now or I got to finish it later. Why not do it now? It's not going to get easier later. So that visualization was really helpful for me.
Yeah.
And same thing with buying this house. The house I live here in Puerto Vallarta, I bought it and paid it off in 3 years. And the offer I made to the real estate agent to buy it with some owner finance. Oh, the owners will never accept that. And I said, make the offer. And I visualized being in that house and that house being mine. I've owned it now for 6 years, and it's paid it off in 3 years. So there is a power to it, and it's not magic. You still got to do the work. You still got to take the steps to get you there. You still got to take the action. But I think it does help to visualize the outcome and feel how it would feel to have that outcome. That seems to be a key part of it. See it clearly and feel the feelings of it.
Yeah, I mean, I've read a lot of autobiographies of successful people, like several dozen, and I try to look for commonalities. Like, what are the common things that all these different types of successful people are doing? And the one thing that I've noticed is pretty much every single one of them talks about visualization. That just seems to be the common thread over and over again. Athletes, millionaires,
Yeah.
bodybuilders. It's always pretty much all of them. They all talk about visualization. So that's kind of what has me thinking. Like, all right, there has to be something to this. If like every
I think there is. If you can't see yourself being there, in fact, this is one way you can even work on the self-limiting beliefs. Visualize the thing you want to have happen. For example, I told you about this 8-week challenge group that I'm leading. Week or two ago, I did a visualization where I visualized their best life, and I visualized them living in the most perfect place in the world for them, in the most beautiful home they could imagine. And they designed it; it's theirs. There's a room in the house where they create, they build, they make music, they whatever they do. There's a home part in there where they socialize, the bedroom. I have them visualize where it is, the home, what they're doing in it, how it feels in it. And I tell them before I do the visualization, watch your resistance. It's going to come up. Notice it and then come back. And so just visualizing having an amazing home, an amazing life will trigger all your self-limiting beliefs. And one of the ways that it happens most often is the person will just quit doing the visualization. They'll just think about something else. Or they'll get stuck on, well, is this really where I want to live? Maybe I could live here. Well, maybe this would be a better place to live. And so their resistance actually can work by just never letting them actually pick one place and visualize it for the sake of a 10-minute visualization. So resistance, self-limiting beliefs come up in so many ways. And like I said, and we're talking, you don't even have to physically get out of your comfort zone for them to come up. You can visualize yourself out of your comfort zone and they'll come up.
Yeah, for sure. Robert, I want to ask you one quick question. And there's someone in the chat who says he read your book, but he has some issues with the dating market. Would you be open if we invite him on?
That issues with what?
He said he read your book, but he's still having issues with dating.
Okay, sure.
All right, cool. So the question I wanted to ask you is actually completely on a different note, but in my community, there's this big thing they talk about, which is called NoFap, which is basically a concept.
I know what that is.
Okay. What are your thoughts about that?
I think in general, pornography doesn't serve men well. I think it distracts us from, really getting out and getting what we really want in life. I think, I tell guys it's called a sex drive because it's meant to drive you to pussy. It's not meant to drive you to your computer or your hand. Now, I don't shame men about it. In fact, I think shame is the thing that makes pornography and habitual masturbation almost as appealing as it is, because it makes us feel bad about ourselves. So I try to help guys. I was just talking to a guy about this just a day or so ago, about where I'd sit with my clients and have them show me the porn they look at. And really, I used to have the best job in the world. I get paid to look at porn. But we would talk about it like you and I are talking, just kind of, all right, what do you like about that? We're talking like about cars or sports. We're looking at, girl on girl, guy on whatever. And we're releasing the shame of it, because I call porn and fantasy safe sex, because there's no risk. You don't have to talk to anybody. You don't have to risk failure. You don't have to risk not being good enough, being rejected. So it's such a seductive way to feel like we're getting some sexual outlet and release, but yet it keeps us in the nursery. It keeps us in adolescence, basically, to where when we didn't have the skills or the opportunity to actually go be with a real live human being. So I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's immoral. I just don't think it serves men well in general who want to live a big life. And again, I try to help men release their shame around it, because adding to the shame, it just intensifies the drive to go feel bad.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think what I see is extremes. Either you got like the religious community who say porn is evil. You should like the shame, which I think it's like, well, there's nothing evil with porn, but I don't think it helps you, live a happy life. Certainly not the way most people consume it, which is like, every other day, if not every day. But yeah, like I've been doing, like, for example, NoFap for like 6-7 years. And what I think is interesting, what happens is like, okay, I think especially in the early stages, it motivates you to try harder. So if you're at a bar, maybe you talk to a few girls, you got rejected, and you're like, yeah, what's the point? I'm just going to go home and jerk off to this like really hot porn star. Why am I bothering? Right. So you're going to take the easy way out. But if that option doesn't exist, it's like, hey, listen, the only way I'm going to have an orgasm tonight is if I get a girl back to my place. You're gonna talk to a lot more girls. So I think it's like
that's what I said. It drives you to pussy. It doesn't it doesn't drive you to your computer screen. That's what a sex drive is meant for. Is to go connect with a real live human being.
Yeah, I think the good news though for guys who are like thinking about this, NoFap gets so much easier the more you do it. Like for me, it's like super easy. Like I have close to no temptation to like watch porn nowadays, but at first it's pretty hard. It's like quitting like junk food, right? At first it's really hard, but then it just becomes a habit. So it gets a lot easier.
And I tell guys, let's not say I need to quit because I'm bad for doing it. In fact, I liken porn to carbs. Okay, if you make a decision, all right, eating a lot of carbs is not good for me. So I'm going to make a conscious decision to not eat so many carbs because I'm healthier. It's better for me.
Right.
And you can do the same thing with porn. You make a decision. It's not bad. It's not evil. It's not going to destroy me. But it's not serving me. So I'm gonna, just like I'm gonna eat healthier and not eat so many carbs. I'm gonna stop looking at porn because it doesn't take me in the direction I want to go.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, 100%. All right, let's bring this guy on. His name is Fury Notes. He said he has some questions. Hello, Fury Notes.
Hello. Thanks for having me on. Okay, so I discovered the red pill back in around 2013, 2014, and actually went away from it because really what it was just giving me a bad perspective on women. And eventually, I did find your book. While I was working at a job, and that does help. And I remember like part where you talked about the the porn thing and how it and controls you and stuff. I actually don't have a huge problem with porn as I did as in my early 20s. But my preferences for sex is fairly reasonable. I don't go to extremes or anything like that. I mean, I don't mind something like pegging or what's it called? What's another one would be is
Well, Fury, let's kind of like
Amazon precision.
Yeah.
Yes.
What's kind of like
All right.
There's
Well-
a question, right?
yeah, there's a question.
Right. So my problem is like, well, I'm vegan, and I know that a lot of women, some women are attracted to me, but for me, there's a wall there for like, okay, I don't really want to date you because you are not vegan, and for me, this is the biggest roadblock for me.
So you're
And-
saying you don't want to date non-vegan women?
Yes.
Okay.
So although I could, and I think if I wanted to, I would have done that already.
No, we
And-
understand. Yeah.
And I mean,
so is there a question there? Is that getting in the way of you meeting kind of
Yeah, I
women
think
you'd
it's-
like to be with? Or
well, as a vegan dude, there's some like blowback, and obviously like my some of my sexual preferences are not quite not what every guy cares or wants either. But I don't want to be I don't want to be put in a box
Okay.
of what
Yeah.
others want me to be. I want to be the person I want to be.
Okay.
And
I think you got
That's
it, yeah.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as we talked earlier on the call, I think we're both in agreement. Being authentic is really a powerful way to create the life that you want. And when I got out in the dating world, again, my late 40s, early 50s, one of the things I quickly realized is just what a variety there is out there of people, right?
Yeah.
People, women that, I didn't realize women were so kinky. I didn't realize so many were vegans. And what I found was instead of thinking I have to adapt me to become what I think, women want in a guy, I went out there and just was me and was curious about, who the women are and let them just be whoever they were. And what I found is I had some really, really great adventures of just getting to know them and whatever their kinks are, letting them get to know me and whatever my kinks are, rather than either one of us trying to, well, how do we be what we both think the other person is wanting of us? So this is so powerful. That's why I say dating it is such a, if you're consciously dating, it's a powerful personal growth machine. Go out and be you. And my hunch is if you go out and be you, you will attract people who like the you that you are. But if you go out and try to be what you think other people might want you to be, you're probably going to attract people that want you to be something other than what you are.
Yeah, I would just add to that. I think the vegan community is predominantly women, so there's plenty of vegan girls out there.
I found that out. I agree with that.
Yeah, I think
That's what I
think-
keep hearing.
Oh,
No,
wait,
I mean,
Fury,
I
wait, let me finish. So yeah, I think the vegan community is kind of similar to the yoga community, which I was involved in. It's like 70-80% women. So I think you can just go to like vegan meetups, join like vegan clubs.
Go to vegan restaurants.
I went to be I used to live in a place where it was more vegan friendly, though it's difficult to find locally unless you drive at least an hour away to like the place where there's more a vegan community. Because
Fury Motes, let me ask you a question. Do you find yourself talking yourself into your beliefs? I can't date because I'm a little bit different than, in what I like sexually than other men. And I can't date because, women, I might not find a vegan. Because the reason I ask that is a lot of guys do that. they come up with, 1,000 really good reasons why they can't date. And then once you believe them to be true, I promise you'll find them to be true. Because I think
Well,
Alex and I, listen for a minute. Alex and I are both listening to you, and I think both he and I have had enough experiences out there. Number one, when I was dating, one of the first questions I'd ever, I wouldn't take a woman to dinner on her first date. But when we did get to the dinner date, I would say, do you have specific food preferences or things you don't eat? Because I said, all right, this is fine. And, if I don't eat meat or I'm vegan. So if they had preferences different than mine, I'm a meat eater. But if they were like vegan, I'd say, great. I want you to educate me on being a vegan. I'm going to let you pick the restaurants we go to. I'm going to let you pick the food we eat because I want to learn to eat vegan. Not that I want to change me in any way. I didn't care. I just saw it as an adventure and say, well, all right, what can I learn? How can I have a different out of the box experience by letting the woman say, okay, let's order this. Okay, great. I don't know what it is, but let's try it. I want to eat vegan. And that to me was always a fun experience. And I'd have the same experience sexually. Once I found out that women had certain kinks, I'd go, okay, not my kink, but teach me. Let's. And so what I found is if you get these kind of rigid beliefs, women are this way or dating's this way, it's going to be that way. But if you say, wait, I think I'll go have an adventure and find out what's out there, you'll find things that you didn't see coming. Kind of like that mantra I said earlier. I love waking up in the morning, not knowing how my day's going to end. And if you're open to the adventure, but if your mind's made up, well, you can't date or you can't get this, or you can't get that because of this, that's exactly what's going to happen to you.
yeah. To add on that, like me personally, I eat a strict paleo diet. I'm really strict paleo, right? I don't break my diet ever. But as strict as I am with my diet, I don't care what my partner eats. Like I don't care if my girlfriend. I've had vegan girlfriends. I've had Mediterranean diet girlfriends. My girlfriend now just seems to eat whatever, and she still stays skinny. I'm not really sure how that works, but yeah. So like, but you're entitled to your preferences, right? I mean, again, if you ask me, that's not something I look for. I look more for like things like loyalty, empathy, intelligence, attractiveness, like promiscuity, stuff like that. But if that's important to you, that's fine. Those girls exist. The vegan community is predominantly women, but I do think you have to like not get in the trap of just like making excuses, right? So like if you live in the middle of nowhere where there's like no one here at all, then consider moving. Like move to a place that's more vegan friendly if that's something that's really that important to you. Because if you're not willing to move to to a place that's more vegan friendly, then the vegan thing is not that important to you.
And I'll give you an example of that. I work with guys, and I've had guys say, I work in Silicon Valley. It's predominantly male. So it's a sausage fest. And I go, there's nowhere to meet women. I go, I bet I could come to where you live, and I could get 3 dates in a weekend. I bet I could do it. Because I don't have a self-limiting belief that says, where I live, there's not what I'm looking for. I would go find it. I'd go get 3 dates. I could do it. So again, what we believe to be true is going to be true. Our mind will find every self-fulfilling prophecy to back up our belief. And that's why I'm asking you. You seem kind of hell-bent on holding on to what you believe to be true. That because you're vegan, you have a little bit different sexual preferences, you're not going to find a woman where you live that is interested in that. But you don't know. You don't know.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I do understand. I actually the different sexual preferences I don't really have a problem with. I mean, I can figure. I can figure that out. Just talk to women and that's fine. The vegan thing, I think you're probably right about. It is the thing that's kind of like holding me back.
Okay, well, let me give you an example. I've worked with a number of people that practice polyamory. They have open relationships. And everybody I know that does this well, on the first interaction they have with a woman is they tell them up front, I'm polyamorous, I'm not monogamous. I do open relationships. And they just tell them up front. They get that out of the way. And it's amazing how many women that even maybe don't swing that way still want to continue the conversation and still find them interesting and maybe even still go out with them. And so, if this is something you're worried about, just up front say, hey, I swing this way. Here's who I am. I just tell you that up front. No big deal. Just
I'm vegan. I love the vegan diet. I'm super passionate about it.
I'm vegan. Yeah. Why not?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. Obviously you can, I do think your book does help.
Well, that's good to hear. I'm glad to hear that.
I've read it at least 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I think it was before I discovered Alex and things like that. So
I'll tell you what, check out, I've got another book called Dating Essentials for Men. Check that out because it relates a lot to the self-limiting beliefs in dating.
All right. I might have that book. I'm not too sure. I might have that book.
Okay. Check it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Well,
Good talk to you, man.
Thank you very much.
Take care for your nuts. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Take care, buddy. All right. Are you down to do one more person, or you got a dip?
Yeah, let's do one more, and then we'll call it a night.
All right.
I think I got some tacos waiting for me.
Okay. Well, you are in Mexico, so that would make sense. What's up, Niles?
Hey, can you hear me?
How's it going?
Great. I'm doing good. I had a question about bringing back to the porn discussion, if that's okay. Y'all want to segue to something?
Sure. Like I said, I get paid for looking at porn and talking about porn.
All right,
Great
cool.
job.
Yeah, then this question will be on point. I wanted to ask, like, for younger guys or guys who like grew up with around more like porn and like easily accessible stuff like that, where it became a social norm for people to engage with it. Like, what are some of your tips for avoiding that stuff or trying to branch out away from it?
Okay. How old are you, Niles?
I'm 19.
19. Okay. Well, let me just say this, and then I'll hand it off to you, Alex. My son's 37, and I raised a stepson and a son that were just 6 months apart. They came into adolescence with the boom of the internet, and then I remember waiting. We had dial-up, and we kept waiting for broadband to come to our neighborhood. Nowadays, I don't think they even talk in those terms, but to get broadband so you could stream stuff and basically all broadband did was make it easier to steal music on Napster and look at porn. And so we finally got broadband, and like no matter what we tried to do, no matter where we put the computers in the house, my sons were they were always looking at porn. And quite honestly, this is kind of funny. The only way we could get my boys to quit looking at porn, and again, not that I thought it was bad, sex was bad. I just knew at 14, 15 years old, having a steady stream of porn probably wasn't good for their developing sexuality.
Yeah.
And the only thing we could do to actually slow, this is before everybody had a smartphone that could stream at really high rates as well. And so all we could do is we went back to dial-up. And so, but this, I'll apply this to your situation. If you're trying to watch porn on dial-up, nobody has dial-up modems anymore, but it loads real quickly. Alex might remember. So, it's coming up a line at a time, and you're thinking, oh, I think that's a boob. I think it's a boob. Oh, no, it's an elbow. We're all so excited. It's an elbow. It's not even a boob. So that was the only thing that got my boys to quit looking at so much porn, was to make it uninteresting to look at porn. And so one of the things you may just play with is how can you make it uninteresting to look at porn? And in some of the surest ways I've known to make it uninteresting is turn the sound off. Porn is not near as interesting without sound. And another thing to do is show it to somebody that you have respect for and that you want their approval, and say, I look at porn. Can I show you what I look at? And all of a sudden, that porn becomes a lot less appealing and interesting.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm not against porn. Every now and then my wife will go, how come you say, let's look at porn together? And I go, because it's not in my mindset. But my wife likes to look at porn every now and then. So we'll get the computer out and usually look for two women together, because she likes that stuff. And we'll watch it together. So another way to work with your porn is only look at it if you're looking at it with somebody else.
I agree with that. Yeah. I think
that makes sense.
I'll do that from time to time. I'm actually a little confused by your question. So you're saying that, maybe I misunderstood you. You're saying that your friends are like watching porn all the time, or is that what you were saying?
Kind of, not exactly. It's just like, I just notice more and more, like, and I guess it's from my peer group and other peer groups I've observed, like engagement with it is just so much higher. Like, I'm in college now, and even where I am, like, I can name a bunch of people in my social circle and social circles connected to me that like girls who are doing OnlyFans, like they're in college, right? And it's just like all this stuff is readily accessible because of the internet, like Mr. Glover talked about, and
And
people's
colleges
engagement
have
with it is
really
more
good
personal.
internet.
Yeah, people's engagement with it is more personal because people are doing it, and it's part of like how they're making money on the side.
Also,
Or in
people are
school.
making porn.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that
Oh,
too.
that's different.
That's
Oh,
a different question.
Yeah.
All right, forget everything I said. Different question.
yeah. Okay. So, okay. That yeah. That also, because I was confused. I was like, you're hanging out with your friends, and they're like, yo, man, watch this chick get real.
No, that's not what I
Okay.
was saying.
Yeah. Because I was like, that's different than my friends. But okay. So you have friends who are making porn, which is
Yeah.
I can relate to that. I live in Miami. I interview a lot of porn stars. I also know people who make porn. What's well, you're not watching your friends have sex though. Like,
No, yeah.
right. So what's the? I guess I'm trying to understand what's the issue.
Yeah, where's
I
the
just
problem?
noticed that like at least like there are a few people that I know who suffer from it much worse. Because it's like something that they're surrounded by and it's like a social norm. I noticed that it like hampers their ability to go out and engage with women in like a positive way, whether it's like at bars and social events. And I just wanted to know like what are some strategies that y'all think would help a person in that situation like do better, or how should someone like help a person that they know who's like has a bad engagement with it?
Well, I think. Go ahead.
I'll throw out two thoughts. One, and Alex will talk more about it. NoFap really, I think, is a good way to point someone in that direction. But I'm a therapist, a coach. I help people, but I've also realized I can't help anybody unless they want to be helped, unless they really want to work on it. So me pointing out somebody else's problem, whether, hey, I think you need to lose weight, or I think you need to get in shape, or I think you need to quit looking at porn, or I think you need to, whatever. If they're not asking me for that advice or help, I'm just being codependent with them. I'm not really serving them, and maybe I'm just kind of focusing on them as an easy distraction from whatever I need to be focused on for myself. So if guys aren't wanting anything different, your 2 cents on it, it's just gonna
Yeah, it's gonna bounce
right off. And the NoFap is a good way to go.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. You can't help people who don't want to be helped. I've noticed this time and time again. I've had so many people I've tried to help who didn't ask for help. Never once has it led to them changing. Not once. Not once. People who want to get help, yeah, you can totally help them. So my question would be, do your friends want to get help or no?
I feel like, yeah, if you come across as judgy, people are always going to be standoffish towards you.
You're right about that. Yeah.
The people that I do know who would like experience that kind of stuff, I think a better way to go about it would be something way more indirect. Just like trying to be around them in situations where they can like branch out and just slowly not need to rely on that stuff anymore would be better than trying to like confront them on some weird
But
stuff.
have they asked you for help? That would be my question.
Yeah, like in conversations they brought it up. It's like,
okay.
Well, I lose motivation. I don't really want to go
Okay,
out.
so I think that's a little different. Yeah, if they've expressed interest in changing. So in which case, yeah, I would just give them like very practical advice. I'd be like, listen, there's a bunch of really good videos. I forget this guy's name. I interviewed him a few months ago, but he basically talks about how porn like literally affects your dopamine system and rewires it, right? And I think there's validity to that, right? So show him a video like that, that's just going to give him a very visual idea of how the porn that he's watching is tinkering with his brain, right? So he can understand that it's urgent. The second thing, it just goes back to NoFap. Like, okay, and you can start off like slow. You can start off, okay, I'm going to make a rule for myself. I'm not going to watch porn more than once a week. Just once a week is all I get to watch porn. Then you do that for a few months, and then you're like, okay, once every 2 weeks, right? So you can kind of like I remember I did this when I was quitting smoking cigarettes. I didn't just go cold turkey. I just like slowly I had rules for myself, and I would slowly, kind of just like every week I would just turn down the number of cigarettes I would smoke. But I think like just kind of like getting to the point where you're doing NoFap. And I think if you start having sex with girls,
that's what I was going to bring up. That just disappears. Yeah.
I don't think it disappears. Right?
It goes underground.
That too.
But it helps a lot. It's like, it helps a lot. So I think also like teaching these guys game and like getting them out there and like helping them pick up chicks. And when they can experience actually having sex with a real girl, it's like porn doesn't even come close for me. Like,
it's nothing like it.
It's not even close.
I noticed for me, like when I started like, talking to women more often, hooking up, doing whatever with women just on a regular basis, it became normal for me. my urge to like engage with that stuff was just like nothing compared to what it was before. Like it was just absolutely gone. So I think just being in different environments will just naturally make it go away, or
Yeah, someone
taper
says
it down some.
this guy. I like this guy, Andrew Huberman. He's a neuroscientist. He has a video about how porn messes with your dopamine system. So I think
Yeah.
Somebody just sent that to me last week, that same video. And then a good buddy of mine just mentioned he was going to sign up for. So that's the fourth time I've heard his name in like the last 2 weeks. So that's kind of like when the universe is saying, pay attention to this guy.
Yeah, I would love to get on his podcast. He's a very fascinating guy. Yeah, maybe one day. But yeah, cool. Awesome. Nas, thanks for coming on, buddy.
Thanks, no
Nas.
problem. Appreciate y'all.
Take a good one. Have a good one. Awesome. All right, Robert, I really enjoyed this conversation. I've really enjoyed how the fact that you and I, again, two completely different generations, backgrounds, worlds, have come to a lot of the same conclusions. I always get a kick out of that.
That's always fun, isn't it?
Because I don't think you and I have disagreed on anything so far during this conversation, which is very rare because usually I disagree with a lot of things.
Yeah, I kind of thought maybe you're trying to find some things to disagree with me on, but it's like we worked at it. And you didn't say anything that I thought, oh, fuck, I can't believe you said that. Everything you said, I thought, yeah, I've got examples of that.
Yeah, ditto. Yeah, but awesome, Robert. Do you want to give the guys, tell them, where they can find you, some stuff you're working on, how they can support
Yeah, I'm in
you?
Puerto Vallarta. Yeah, just drglover.com, drglover.com. And they'll find everything I've got.
Are you working on any new projects, or do you have anything coming
Oh
up?
my goodness, am I working on? Yeah, I'm building a membership community that's going to house everything I've ever created. It's going to have a 52-week journey of integration and mastery. It's going to be amazing. And I've got where's the list I made? I've got a list of about 10 more books I'm writing or wanting to write. So I've got plenty going on.
Okay, awesome, cool. I look forward to that. But yeah, anyway, thank you so much. It was good chatting.
Alex, thanks for the invitation. This was fun.
For sure. It was a pleasure. Have a good night, Robert.
All right,
care, buddy.
take care, man.